guys, it's Ella. Welcome to my channel, whether you are new here or not. Today, we are going to be talking about books that I think are super underrated. So there are a lot of super popular books that go around BookTok and BookTube and Bookstagram and all the book social medias, and I think that they're super deserving of the hype. Spanish Love Deception, love it. Love Hypothesis, love it. Like, there are so many that I just absolutely love. As I was saying, there are so many books that Crosby and I think absolutely deserve the hype that they are given. But there are also a lot of books that Crosby and I have read that we think don't get nearly the amount of attention and love that they deserve, right, bud? So, we're going to be talking about some of those books today. You'll hear him and see him running around as you do in all of my videos if you aren't new here, so just do your best to ignore him. The first book that I think is criminally underrated is Weather Girl by Rachel Lynn Solomon. Weather Girl is about a girl named Ari Abrams who has always been obsessed with weather. She has always dreamt of being a meteorologist, specifically working under another like really prominent meteorologist named Torrance Hale, who works for a very specific TV station, right? Yeah. And so she ends up achieving that dream and working under Torrance Hale. However, Torrance Hale went through a pretty rough divorce a couple of years ago, and her ex-husband also works at the station as a sports reporter. And Ari and one of her coworkers who works under Torrance's husband, they are like, hey, they're bickering and their, divorced person behavior really ruins our experience working here. It really ruins our experience working here, and we should do something about it. So they team up to try to get Torrance and her ex-husband back together, but in the end, obviously, like, Russell, her coworker, and Ari end up falling in love at the same time. It's phenomenal. Like I said, I gave it 5 stars. There is a lot of good mental health representation. There's a lot of really good mental health representation in this book. Ari struggles with depression, and Russell is a plus-sized hero, which I feel like we don't have nearly enough of those. So yeah, I feel like this book doesn't get nearly the hype that it deserves. I think that there's a lot of talk about Rachel Lynn Solomon's YA books, and there was also a lot of talk about her book, The X-Talk. However, I think this one is better than any of her YA books, and is better than The X-Talk. I absolutely loved this book, 5 stars, and it was a very surprising 5 stars. I wasn't anticipating it. The next book that I don't think gets the hype that it deserves is Act Your Age, Eve Brown by Talia Hibbert. Now, when it's Get a Life, Chloe Brown first came out, there was so much hype and attention surrounding that book, and then Take a Hint, Dani Brown came out, and again, there was so much hype and attention surrounding that book, and everybody absolutely loved it. I also loved those 2 books. I thought that, Dani Brown was even better than Chloe Brown, and then I got to Eve Brown, and I thought that she was my absolute favorite. So imagine my surprise when this one wasn't talked about nearly as much as Dani Brown and Chloe Brown. I thought that Eve Brown was the best of the 3 sisters, or at least her romance in her book was the best of the 3 books. This book is about Eve, who is the youngest Brown sister. She's the youngest sister, as we've talked about, of Chloe and Dani. She's flaky and never really had much responsibility in her life, and finally her parents are like, hey, you can't keep a job and we've done you a disservice by providing for you well into your adult years and you still don't know how to do anything, so we're cutting you off until you can figure out what you want to do with your life. So she has to go figure out what she wants to do with her life after yet another failed job attempt. So she goes to this bed and breakfast, interviews for a position there for a very grumpy bed and breakfast owner named Jacob Wayne, and when she gets there she realizes that this isn't the right environment for her, and Jacob Wayne's like, yeah, you don't get the job. As she's leaving, Jacob Wayne comes out because he changed his mind and he wants to offer her the job, and she hits up with her car, and so then she has to take care of him. Loved this book. There's autism representation. Jacob has autism, and I just thought this book was so good, and I don't know why people didn't talk about its release as much as they did when Dani and Chloe Brown were released. And I think that's criminal because this book is so good and I love it. Up next, we have Make It Sweet by Kristen Callahan. This book is one that I read on my iPad and I loved it so much that I bought it. This book it's grumpy sunshine, but the character, the hero, has reasons for being grumpy, unlike a lot of books, I think. So Sorry, I get a little floaty. In this story, Emma is an actress who was on a Game of Thrones-esque show. She was a princess, and the show was super successful. She was a super successful actress, and then her character gets killed off at the very beginning of the book, and she doesn't know what she's supposed to do with her life. She's like talking to her family, and she's like, what do I do now? Because this, you know, being Princess Anya is all I've known how to do. It's all I've known how to be successful at. And so her grandmother says, hey, I have this friend who owns this estate, this gorgeous estate in California. Why don't you go there and figure yourself out? So she goes to this estate to figure herself out, and who else is at this estate but Lucian Osmond, who is the grandson of the woman who owns the estate. He is an ex-hockey player. He got a brain injury from playing hockey, and so he can't play anymore, and he, like Emma, doesn't know what to do with himself because all he's ever known how to be successful at is playing hockey. So they are, you know, kindred spirits in that they don't know what they're gonna do next. Their lives have been thrown upside down. And she is, you know, she's more bubbly and she's more open and optimistic to trying to figure things out, even though she is going through a rough time. And Lucian is not open to figuring things out, and he's very upset, and he just wants to stay in his little bungalow thing and bake. And quite frankly, I think he should be allowed. This book had all the spice, all the grumpy sunshine without it being toxic goodness. It had just a super sweet hero, and I don't know. I just really, really enjoyed this book, and I think for as much as people love the grumpy sunshine trope, this book doesn't get talked about enough, and I think that that's, once again, criminal. The next book that I don't think gets talked about nearly enough is Set on You by Amy Leah. Now, I will give people the benefit of the doubt. This book did just come out, and I have seen a little bit of buzz around it. I know that some really big bookstagrammers got arcs of this book, and some people are talking about it. However, I don't think nearly enough. I think that this book should get, like, we're talking love hypothesis level attention, and it just doesn't. This book is about Crystal. She's a curvy fitness influencer, and she's very confident in her body, she's very confident in herself, and she's very confident in her skills at the gym. So she goes to the gym one day, and this guy takes the squat rack that she uses all the time, and that I think she was using. And so he takes her squat rack, and she's like, hey, you took my squat rack. And he's like, I could not care less. And thus starts a very frustrating series of encounters with these two characters at the gym. They also have another connection elsewhere that you find out pretty quickly in the book, but anyway, they have another connection that I won't spoil. And his name is Scott Ritchie. I forgot to say that. He is a firefighter and a Chris Evans lookalike, and if you know me, you know that I love Chris Evans. Love. So this book was really, like, just phenomenal. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. It was really, really good. And I don't totally understand why this book didn't get, you know, the attention that it deserves. Because it didn't get the attention that it deserves. And so this is my attempt. Here, read the book, please. Okay, the last book that I have here with me physically is one that I have talked about on my channel so many times, and I'm going to keep talking about it until everyone I know has read it, okay? Okay. That is The Highland Fling by Megan Quinn. Are you sick of hearing me talk about this yet? I don't care. This book is about a woman named Bonnie. Bonnie is down on her luck and kind of, again, like early 20s, doesn't know what she wants to do with her life. And so her roommate slash best friend says, hey, I actually applied for us to go take care of this coffee shop in the Scottish Highlands because the owners are going on a month-long vacation, and they accepted our application, and I think we should take it, and we should go, and we should see what the world has in store for us. And Bonnie's like, I got nothing else going on, so they go. And they take this job offer to take care of this coffee shop in the Scottish Highlands for a month. They go, they have so many misadventures, like getting there. I was laughing out loud at the beginning of this book, and it takes a lot for a book to make me laugh out loud. This book is just that good. It's just that good. So they get to the coffee shop only to find that Rowan McGregor, the owner of the coffee shop's very grumpy and unpleasant son had no idea his parents were going out of town for a month, and that they were giving this coffee shop to these two young American girls to run. And as you can probably imagine, given that he is already, you know, grumpy, he was not thrilled about this particular situation. And he has to get over his bad self, and Bonnie's gonna help him. And this book is just so good. I loved it. I loved it. I loved it. The next books that I have to talk about, I don't have physically with me, so we're gonna do our little fun putting the picture on the screen thing. So the first one is another one that I've talked about on my channel so many times, Lingus by Mariana Zapata. This book is one of Mariana Zapata's most underrated books ever. Ever. It is one of her earlier works, so I normally attribute it to that, but like, it's one of my favorites by her, and I don't think people read it nearly enough. This book is about a girl named Kat. Kat goes to a porn convention with her best friend, and when she's there, she really has no interest in like being there, and she meets this guy named Tristan who also appears to have no interest in being at this particular porn convention. So they strike up a conversation. However, the kicker is that Tristan actually has to be at the porn convention because he's a porn star named Robbie Lingus. So even though Kat is very interested in him, she's not comfortable with what he does for a living. So they have to stay friends rather than getting into a relationship. So if you like friends to lovers, this book is for you, which is one of the reasons that I don't totally understand why people don't talk about this or don't like it, or like don't really read it that much, because friends to lovers is all the rage right now, guys. So here you go. Here's a really solid friends to lovers book. I'm handing it to you as a gift. There you go. There's your gift of a phenomenal friends to lovers book. Slow burn, as all Mariana Zapata books are, but so just incredibly worth it. Alrighty, so next we have a Colleen Hoover book, and that's Confess by Colleen Hoover. And I know, there's no Colleen Hoover book that doesn't get the hype. But like all Colleen Hoover books as a collective get the attention. I get it. However, this one is my favorite of hers, and it's not one of the ones that's talked about more commonly, and that makes zero sense to me. Okay, so Confess is about a girl named Auburn whose life has just kind of been a series of unfortunate events, and in an attempt to kind of rebuild her life that has been a series of unfortunate events, she moves to Dallas. And because there's something very important to her in Dallas, she moves there and gets a job at this art studio. The owner of this art studio is a guy named Owen, and his whole like art exhibit at the moment is people give him their secrets and he paints pictures based on their secrets. What Auburn doesn't realize is that Owen has a lot of secrets of his own that can impact the things that in Dallas that are important to her. And it's a classic Colleen with a lot of like plot twists and turns and angst and frustrations, and also everything kind of ends up how it should, I hope. I don't know. Are all of hers like that? I think all of hers have happy endings. Anyway, Confess is my favorite Colleen Hoover book, and for some reason it's not one that a lot of people really talk about, to the extent that people don't talk about Colleen Hoover books. I think that this one deserves just as much hype as Ugly Love November 9th That Ends With Us, and it doesn't get that amount of love, and I think that that's unfortunate. Okay, so the next two are Okay, so the next two books on this list are the only two on this list that aren't romances. However, I think that they are still very important. Okay, so first, they're both by Tiffany D. Jackson. First, we have Grown by Tiffany D. Jackson. This book is about a young girl who she has always dreamt of becoming like a famous singer. She catches the eye at this like talent show. She catches the eye of an already really famous male singer. She's only 17 and he's considerably older, and it turns into a grooming situation. And the first chapter of the book is that artist, the older man artist, winds up dead. So the book is dark, and it's scary because it's something that happens in real life, but I think that Tiffany D. Jackson is such an amazing author that doesn't get nearly as much attention as she deserves. Like, her books are so good, and they're such important stories, and I feel like people just, I mean, I know some people read them, obviously, because she keeps putting them out, and I do think they end up on the bestseller list, but in terms of like on social media and stuff, I think that these books should get as much attention as like, what's the one I'm thinking of? A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. That's the book I'm thinking of. I think that they have similar like tones. This story deals with uncomfortable relationships and racial issues, and it deals with like success and feminism and like being a woman in certain industries and what you have to do, and just, I think it's just a really important story that a lot of people need to pick up. Another important story that I think a lot of people need to pick up by Tiffany D. Jackson is Monday's Not Coming. This book I read when I was like 16 or 17, and it completely blew my mind. So this book is about a girl named Claudia who has a best friend named Monday. They grew up together. They're basically sisters. And one day Monday doesn't show up for school. And then one day turns into a week. And then 1 week turns into 2 weeks. And Monday just doesn't show up to school. And so Claudia goes to her house. Monday doesn't seem to be at her house. Claudia can't find Monday anywhere, and she seems to be the only person looking for her friend. And that's really frustrating. So it talks a lot about, there's a lot of trigger warnings for this book, so make sure to check the trigger warnings. It's not a thriller as much as it is like, I mean, it is kind of, but it's also a it's just an important story. I don't really know what to say about this book without spoiling it, but it's incredibly heartbreaking, and I think that a lot more people need to read it. On a much lighter note, the last book, it's actually a series that I have on this list, is the Brooklyn Bruisers series by Serena Bowen. Specifically, my favorite is Brooklynaire by Serena Bowen. However, this whole series is hockey romances, and it's by Serena Bowen. So Serena Bowen and Elle Kennedy wrote him, and Elle Kennedy has a hockey romance, which is a hockey romance, right? And then Elle Kennedy has a hockey romance series that's like The Deal, right? But the off-campus series, but then Serena Bowen also has hockey books, and people don't talk about them. And I don't understand, because personally, I like the Brooklyn Bruisers series better than the off-campus series. That's just me and my personal opinion. However, I just wanted to throw these in here because I think if you really liked the off-campus series and you haven't read the Brooklyn Bruisers series, what are you doing? There's also a lot more books in this series, and they're hockey romances, and they're just so good, and I just love them so much. And I don't understand why everybody loves the off-campus series but doesn't read this one, the Brooklyn Bruisers. Jeez. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you feel so inclined, and I will see you when I see you. Bye guys.